I don't know why sometimes the logo shows now in the recording, where it didn't before. Oh well. Oh, loud sounds.
Good morning, class.
Good morning. It's actually quite late. I'm in the evening section. Anyways, welcome back to Paperball. Don't you speak over me, Coco. So, there is one interesting thing that has been put forward, and it's not an arcade mode. I'm curious. No, I'm gonna try... How does the control this? There you go, with the mouse.
Ready, go!
I'm curious, I admit. Oh, that is really, really hard to do.
Ready, go! Ready, go!
So you can probably tell vaguely what I'm doing here?
Fallout.
Ah,
Ready, go! Ready, go!
the other way. It's really hard to move against... The game tries to move the camera when you do this too. It's really hard to move against that.
Ready, go!
Ah, but
Ready,
an idea has been put forward. Darn, why can I do it so much better sometimes than others?
ready,
Simultaneously
go!
moving the camera is really hard here. Wow, that's actually the case. Why? That seems like that's not something that's normally on purpose. In fact, I usually think it was kind of amateur. So, well, I'll mention real quick. I was using the keyboard there. If that gives you a hint as to what I was doing. This has showed up in another game I played actually. Huh, it works that way too. So, there's this trick that actually applies to a lot of games. I usually think of it as older ones, because I like to think that nowadays we know better. But you'll notice in some games, you move faster diagonally. And in fact, in some games, there are interesting things like if you can remove the guards around the analog stick, like so you can actually move the analog stick further in the diagonal direction, you can run faster that way too. Blinks is exactly like that. If you modify your controller to move your stick further, you can run faster that way, and you can make jumps you can't normally make. Why is that the case? Why would moving diagonally work in a way that makes you go faster? Here's the thing. So, think this in terms of how the game's programmed and how you move, and what the inputs are. You press forwards, you move forwards. You press right, you move right. Left, you move left. Well, what happens if you press forwards and right? Well, naively programmed, you just move forwards, and you move right. Both. And in that case, if there's not a special case programmed for moving diagonally, for holding both forward and right, or forward and left, or whatever other combination of directions, 90 degrees from each other, if there's not a special case for that, then what ends up happening is your speeds in one direction and the other will add together. Now, normally, this isn't a very perceptibly large difference, but if you actually measure it, it turns out you're going a lot faster because those two speeds are being added together in the diagonal direction. And you can do the math on that if you want or whatever. But, so... that enabled me to do some interesting maneuvers in one game on the Game Boy, for instance, Jimmy Negatron for the Game Boy. I used that trick, I discovered that trick and then used it quite extensively. In this game, apparently that works too, which surprises me. The reason I first tried this with a keyboard actually was because I suspected that, as is sometimes the case in console games, you wouldn't be able. Also, this is my first time playing this level, so let's see how this goes. My suspicion was that it would be something like Blinks, where if you can't move your... well... Aha! where if you can't move your stick beyond its normal physical range, then you won't actually move any faster, because in that case, what happens is your speed, I believe, is so an analog stick normally it has, in terms of what signal it sends to the game, it normally sends a direction and a distance, I guess you might say. And of course, usually the range of motion is totally circular. So if you move it as far as possible in any direction, that's the same distance. And so if that distance determines the speed you're moving at, for instance, like in blinks, then no matter where you move the stick, if you move it as far as possible, you move at the same speed. If you take away those guards, the object the stick hits, you can hear it now, the side of the stick holder that the analog stick is hitting, you'll find you can actually move the stick further into the diagonal direction. I think it's actually square, the plate that, at least on Xbox controllers, that the stick is moving across. So you can move it further in that one direction. In this game, though, that's not the case. I still move faster even if I'm moving diagonally with an analog stick, even though I'm moving the stick the same total distance from the center position. That's interesting. I wonder if that's because of how they translate analog controls into digital controls in this game. The reason I started with the keyboard controls, I don't know if there's a trick here.
Ready, go!
The reason I started with the keyboard controls is that I knew that I could hold upwards and rightwards or leftwards, and those would be holding maximal
Ready, go!
with maximal force, so to speak, in each direction, because it's just a button that you're holding down or not holding. It's digital, it's binary, unlike the analog stick, which is, as it's called, analog, approximately. But I suspect that when you use an analog stick in this game, the controls are analog, which is nice, which is why I use an analog stick in this game. It gives the precision that you want, generally. And yet, I can still move faster by moving diagonally. And I think that the reason for that is that the game actually probably translates the direction I'm holding on the stick into some combination of digital inputs, like holding upwards with some intensity, holding rightwards with some intensity, for instance, or something like that, I suppose. Something like that, because whatever the end result is, I move faster diagonally. Of course, that has some weird implications for gameplay. I'm not going to bother with Platinum on this one. I have no idea how to get it, unless it's just doing what I was already doing, slightly better. The implication for a game like this one, where you want to get the best time possible, is, a little peculiar, because that means now that the optimal strategy is some weird stuff, like moving diagonally. In fact, it's really, really hard and awkward to move, as you saw, at full speed diagonally with the keyboard and mouse, because you have to constantly move the mouse. Ooh, you can do that from one side to the other, whereas on the controller, that's not an issue, so you get an advantage of using a controller, actually. It feels a little unfair, but I always felt like there was something weird about whenever I was trying to go up slopes, and I was going really slowly, but I noticed my speed wasn't constant. It seemed like something about how I moved was actually still influencing my speed, and I would go faster sometimes than others, and I guess that was why. I guess what was happening that whole time was... Ah, man! That was really improvised there.
Ready?
What was happening was going diagonally made it go faster. So that probably solves some of my frustrations with not being able to go through certain parts of some levels fast enough. But, I mean, I take some issues with that. One, well, no, it's not that I so much take issue with it existing. I kind of do, because I think that's something that developers should know about, and if they did know about it and then left it in deliberately, that I do kind of object to. Because I don't really... I mean, as far as like speedrunning and whatnot goes, everything is fair game. But like enforcing a thing like that is to me rather strange as a decision. And it's not really pleasant to do. Which brings me to one of the things I was trying to say. Darn it.
Go!
It's... the implication now, or the end result, is that if you want to get the best times,
Ready?
one, globally, sure, but two, more importantly, even just for platinums and whatnot, assuming that they were aware of this trick, requires you to use this arcane diagonal movement technique, which, one, as far as I can tell, is discriminatory against people who don't have controllers, not that this whole game isn't, and two,
Ready? Go!
is just annoying.
Ready? Go!
But as we've seen so far,
Ready? Go!
this game has been pretty brutal with its expectations for platinum. So far, I have not been able to find, I don't think, any case of outsmarting the game as far as platinum went. And it's always seemed like getting platinum pretty much anywhere required
Ready?
figuring out all the tricks and using them in a given level. Maybe except for diagonal movement, I guess, in a lot of cases. Unless I was using it inadvertently in a lot of cases, which I might have. Shoot.
Ready? Go! Ready?
Except, at least for the first level, where I knew there had to be some trick. That never even occurred to me that diagonal movement might be the way to do that. But so it's one thing, well, I do object, I think, to really any level requiring that kind of movement for platinum. I realize platinum's kind of like beyond what the game really asks of you. It's kind of a special thing. So you could say, well, it's not like normal, like platinum's an extra thing where they can do whatever they want and ask whatever they want of you, and I could see that. But requiring use of a glitch to do that is kind of weird, especially when that's a glitch that those same developers probably should have fixed themselves. So I'm not sure how to feel about that. Whoops.
Ready? Go!
So having required use of that at all, which to me seems to have been the case, it looks to me like you actually needed to use that trick for the first level, which is kind of interesting in that you wonder for so long, how do you get platinum here? And yet, there is a trick to it, and you eventually find it out. It's like I've said in lots of other cases, it's the trick. You gotta figure out the trick for platinum. But it's a trick that I don't like, because if it's actually required, and I don't know how else you would get platinum there, get the time that you need. That suggests that developers knew about this trick and didn't get rid of it. And then also required it. There's a certain sense in which if a game expects you to use a glitch, it's not really a glitch anymore, because it's leaving it in as a conscious design choice. But I don't think that's a good design choice, if it is one. If you came up to somebody and said, do you think it would be a good idea in this ball rolling game to make the ball move faster diagonally? And I don't think many people would say yes. So I'm not sure how to feel about that. I'd at least like to hope that if they did deliberately use that one trick in setting the platinum time for the first level, that they didn't do that for any other levels. But now I think it's going to burn at me, knowing that in any case where I want to go faster, what I could do is try to use this really awkward and uncomfortable diagonal movement tech that the developers seem to know about and seem to have deliberately left in. And there'll always be that thought in the back of my head, is this the required way of doing this to get platinum? If I choose not to use this, am I am I not going to be able to get the time they want me to get? I don't know. Anyways, with those thoughts, we'll get back to more like standard things. Well, there is one other thing I want to talk about at some point that's not game related, but whatever. But we'll get back to mostly standard things next episode. I didn't expect that one trick would end up dominating this whole episode. But anyways, bye everyone.